Zweig Group invites all AEC industry leaders to the 2024 AEC Small Business and Entrepreneurship Forum, the premier event for small firms in the AEC sector. Experience innovative strategies and insights on May 21st, crafted by Zweig Group's industry experts. Engage in keynotes and interactive sessions focused on recruitment, retention, and business growth. Join Zweig Group for this unique networking opportunity and take your business to new heights. Secure your spot today and be part of the AEC industry's future. Visit zweiggroup.com for more information. The Zweig Group team looks forward to welcoming you.
Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting advice and guidance in your ear. Zweig Group's team of experts have spent more than 3 decades elevating the industry by helping AEP and environmental consulting firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver invaluable management, industry, client, marketing, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter Podcasts, elevating the design industry one episode at a time.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited to be with you today. I have Brian T. King with me, who is the founder and CEO of AM King. They are a leading integrated design build firm headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina, with offices in Greenville, South Carolina, and Chicago, Illinois. Brian, how are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful, Randy. Great. And thanks for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it. I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to having a good conversation with you.
Yeah, no, I am too. I mean, we had some technical difficulties at first, but that we finally got it worked out. And you know, that's kind of the nature of the beast these days. Everybody has gotten used to meeting virtually. Zoom has become their best friend, and I think we all are clamoring for that face-to-face connection once again, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've actually, as much as possible, and obviously from a safe perspective, I'm trying to have more and more personal meetings, as you know, over the last 6-8 months or so. And it just makes such a difference. It really does. I mean, look, prior to the pandemic, I didn't know what Zoom or Teams or any of these other apps were. I didn't know what they did. And we all had to go through that learning curve, and they're great, right? I think they're changing business. They're changing how we communicate, but to a large extent, there's no substitution for the face-to-face, the personal interaction, especially from a business perspective. It just provides so much more, level of humanity to what we're doing from a business perspective. So, we've still got some challenges ahead with this pandemic and this virus, but I'm just excited, I think, like everybody, to get back to the face-to-face environment.
You and me both. You said a mouthful, and you're absolutely right. I was talking with somebody else the other day, and we were talking about, like, how many big deals do you know that have been like closed exclusively on Zoom? And one of my friends who, he's having to go to Canada to close a deal with a client. And, he's thankful that the Canadian government has opened up the borders again so he can actually do that. Otherwise, this deal would have not happened maybe six to 8 months ago. So, I think we have to be thankful for the little things. And like you said, once we can get through this pandemic, I think we'll all be the better for it.
Oh yeah, we actually, I guess for lack of better words, consummated a deal the first time we've done it, and we did it all virtually. It's a project down in Laredo, Texas, a fairly large project, and with a client that we did not know. Most of our work is for existing clients, but this is a company we did not know that had sought us out, and we started having conversations. And we went into preliminary design. We went into, from there, schematic design. We went into budgeting, really the entire project planning process, all virtually. And we didn't meet face to face. So we were down there breaking ground on this project. And And when I first started, my thought process was, this is never going to happen. We can't do this. We've got to meet. We've got to get together and shake hands and talk and get to know one another. And it worked. And the project it's going to be wrapped up here in October. So yeah, we made it happen. So it's possible, certainly possible.
Yeah, well, certainly, clearly, you guys have not let any grass grow under your feet there at AM King, and I would love for you just to share with our audience here at the Zweigletter podcast. Just give us your superhero origin story, how you got started. I think you guys started the company in 2004, and I'd love for you just to kind of share your journey in the design industry.
Certainly. So AM King is a design build firm. And we are what we call a fully integrated design build firm. And what we mean by that is really two components go into that definition. Number one, we say if we don't design it, we will not build it. And if we don't build it, we won't design it. And we've really stuck to that philosophy throughout the history of the organization. And when I say that we're fully integrated, what I mean by that is that we have in-house design skills and we have in-house construction skills. So we have both of those skill sets in-house. We subcontract a lot of the work on the project, and there are times and for certain disciplines that we go out of house for the design aspect, but we have those disciplines in-house, so we're able to go to our clients and provide that full range of discipline for both the design and the construction. In addition to that, we offer what I call two right and left services. On the left, we get very involved with our clients on the property analysis piece, property selection. So we go all the way from site selection to site analysis to helping them do the due diligence. We've negotiated incentives for clients. We've negotiated the purchase of property for clients. So we offer that property piece, and we've found that's been really valuable to our client base. On the right, or the downside of a building project, we have a facility services group. And by that I mean is that we get embedded into a client's facility where we have teams there, and those teams will provide ongoing maintenance, ongoing CapEx projects. So we really try to run the full gamut of services, if you will, for our customers from the facility perspective. The company, as you said, was started in 2004. I was one of the founders of the company. I founded it with two other gentlemen who, interesting story, when we founded the company, the other two gentlemen said, we want to be out in 10 years. We want to be done in 10 years. And on day one, we developed their 10-year exit strategy. And in 2014, we implemented that exit strategy. These are two gentlemen that I'm still very close with. They were both mentors of mine, but it made for a very clean exit strategy for when they left the company in 2014. And then I was sole owner of the company for up until December of last year. And on December 31st of 2020, the company successfully transitioned into an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan. So now I've done another ownership transition in the company. So I'm no longer the owner of AM King, but I remain on as the president and the CEO. The other sort of interesting thing about us, it's a little different, is that we have a very narrow niche in terms of the type of work we do. About 8% of what we do is in the food industry. And when I say the food industry, it is in food processing, food manufacturing, cold storage, food distribution, anything really to do with the making and the distribution and storage of food. The other 20% of our work is really focused on pretty high level, pretty high tech manufacturing, very specific type of manufacturing facilities, and really almost related to just a few select clients who we provide those manufacturing services for. And that's really all we do. If we build an office building, it's for one of our food or manufacturing clients. We don't do any public work. We don't do retail work. We don't do institutional work. We really just focus on those two sectors for the design and build services that we provide.
Well, you know what they say, there are riches with the niches, right? And I would assume that you have kind of been able to kind of tap into, or like they say, mine that vein in the food space. And then also on a high level with some of the high tech manufacturing that you've done, and you've kind of found your niche. Do you find that you have a lot of competition or that do the same thing that you do in the design build space? Or do you find that there are just a lot of companies that dabble in your area, but don't go deep the way that you do?
Well, a little bit of both. We certainly have competitors, and I say that, when I look at our true competitors, people that do what we do, I run out of companies before I run out of fingers. So, and we're a national company. You have to be to be able to do what we do. So even though we're based in Charlotte, we have the Greenville and the Chicagoland offices that you mentioned. Since the inception of the company in 2004, I think we've worked in about 30 states. And presently, if I were to tell you where we're working, it would be states all over the country, all the way as far west as Texas, as far northeast as Connecticut, all the way down to Florida, out in the Midwest, everything sort of in between. So, so we certainly have competitors, and it's interesting. I know my competitors. They know us. We know each other very well because we really are such a niche market. Now, there are companies that, as you so accurately put it, dabble in what we do. And, I don't mean to sound presumptuous, but we don't really consider them true competitors. What we do is a niche market because it is very specialized. It requires a very specialized skill set. It requires a very, specialized knowledge base. So, we don't really consider those folks that try to dabble and come in and do what we do here and there for a project here and there as a true competitor. Could they take some work away from us? Yeah, absolutely. They could. But I will tell you, the majority of the time when one of our potential customers uses a company that's not, trained and knowledgeable of this type of work, they usually come to regret it. So as a general rule, the companies that we work for are very sound, very solid, good reputation companies, and they know to seek out a company like ours to provide their facility design, construction, their site selection, or even their facility maintenance type of projects.
Well, okay, and that makes perfect sense. I want to continue in this flow of conversation, but I want to back up for a minute because I think it does apply to your origin stories here. I know you're a Gator. You went to the University of Florida. You got a degree in building construction, but it's my understanding that you really cut your teeth right at the start of things in terms of, you didn't have a cushy office job. I mean, you literally dug ditches when you first got started in the industry space. And I'd love for you to just kind of speak about how that kind of helped you become who you ultimately have become over the years, right? Because you're a seasoned executive. People seek you out for your advice. You are training and leading up and professionally and personally helping to develop a lot of the next generation of design build professionals. But what was it like for you at the beginning there back in Florida when you were doing all that work? Very unglamorous work, I might add, of digging ditches. But did you envision yourself being where you are today?
Yeah, I'm curious as to who you've been talking to and getting some of this information.
Well, I do my homework now. This is.
Yeah. So, I get the opportunity to speak a lot at universities, and I love speaking to college students, especially the ones that are like a year or right on the cusp of graduation. And I tell that story a lot, and it's really a story that's very applicable, I think, to that age group because I'm sort of relating, where I was at that time. But so yeah, I'll go back in the history a little bit. So, my dad was a barber, and my mom worked for the railroad. And so I came out of this sort of unique household in a way. And then I had one parent that was an entrepreneur, always had his own business, right? A barber has his own business, and that's the barber shop. My mom working for the railroad, big corporation, right? Everything's sort of there for you. The benefits are there. Nothing's guaranteed, but, it's a pretty safe job. And I really saw, however, the pros and cons of both the corporate world and the entrepreneurial world. So anyway, I was in college. I think I was in first summer out of college, and I was not doing well at school. I was never a good student. And I say that to the university students as well. I was not academically blessed, or maybe I just didn't work very hard. I don't know, one or the other. But summer had started and I was in my dad's barber shop and I did not have a summer job. And the gentleman who built our house walked in and we started talking and he said, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "Well, I'm looking for a job." And he said, "Well, it doesn't look like you're looking really hard right now because you're sitting here in your dad's barber shop." And he said, "Show up tomorrow." And he gave me an address at 7 a.m. And he said, "I'll put you to work." So he said this in front of my dad. And I couldn't say no. I couldn't say, "No, I don't want to do that." So I go out the next morning and I show up and he hands me a shovel and he says, "We've got some work to do." And started digging up. This was in Jacksonville, Florida. And I started digging in the ditches for an irrigation line of a house that he was finishing up. So I tell people, I am one construction guy, executive, however you want to term me, that did genuinely start his construction career digging ditches. That was the very first thing I did when somebody actually paid me to do construction. I sort of fell in love with the construction aspect. I fell in love with the thought process of building buildings and how they come together. And I just thought it was amazing that you could go out into this open patch of land and, you walk away a few months later or a year later and there's this building. And how does that happen? How do you make that happen? How do they know where to put stuff and how do they know what goes next? And, that was just so interesting to me. But I went through the school thing and I was going to get a business degree. And I was actually getting ready to transfer to a college in University of Central Florida. I had been admitted and I was going to go in their business program. And a buddy of mine came home for Thanksgiving and we went out and to just go out and catch up. And I said, "Well, what are you doing?" He was at University of Florida. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm in their building construction program. I'm getting a degree in building construction." And I said, "Wow, you can get a degree in that?" I didn't think I just thought if you wanted to be in construction, you had to be a carpenter or a steel worker or something of that nature. And he said, no, they offer a degree in it. It's a great program at the University of Florida. And long story short, for some reason they let me in. I don't know why. I did not have the greatest GPA, but they let me in. And it was actually a pretty hard program to get into. So I graduated from that program in the mid 80s. And I went to work for a company called McDevitt and Street, which at the time was a North Carolina based company, but I went to work for them in Orlando, Florida. And they were gracious enough to give me an opportunity in their Orlando office as an estimator. So yeah, that's the origin of the whole, the digging ditches. But throughout college, I worked construction. I was always in the field. Now internships tend to be in the office, or if they're on a site, they're it's an office-based position. In the 80s when I was doing it, in the summers, you went out and you poured foundations, you set forms, you carried rebar, you worked. You did a lot of hard work, and that's what I did during my college years to not only gain the experience, but also, I paid for my college doing that. So very valuable experience. And I think that really shaped me. It teaches you how to build, I guess, for lack of a better word. And, that's what I tell these young people coming out of college. And that's why I use this story. I say, look, you're getting a construction management degree or a construction engineering degree, whatever your school's called it. But you need to know how to build. At the end of the day, you need to understand that building process. And Randy, I think that's important, whether you are a construction management degree, whether you're an architectural degree, whether you're some sort of engineering degree. It's sort of like the Tinker Toy said, you need to know how things go together. You need to understand the process. And I don't think that has changed today any more than it was relevant when I came out of school in the mid 1980s, or when people were getting into the occupation, the construction design occupation back in the 50s, 60s, 30s, whatever it is. I think we still need to understand the process of building.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think we really do learn by doing. And I think that I haven't been in this industry as long as you have. I got in 97, but I can remember having conversations with young people that had joined, whether it was a design engineering firm or architecture firm. And, one of my first questions to them would always be, have you been out to see the client? Have you actually been to the job site? And invariably, I would say 8 to 9 times out of 10, Brian, I would hear no. I have not been to the job site. I have not physically seen the space that I'm working on or that I'm responsible for doing CAD drawings for. And that always amazed me. And I know that the industry has changed a lot, but I mean, could you imagine what would have been like for you had you not had a chance to really get your hands dirty and to see what the construction experience was really like?
Yeah, I don't think, I think that's what appealed to me for construction. I mean, I was one of these young people that had no idea what I wanted to do. I had, my brother and I were first generation college students, college graduates, and it was dictated to me by both of my parents that I was going to get a college degree. That was really important to them as two people who came from what they came from said, you're going to get a college degree. So I knew I was going to graduate from college, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I think, spending time in the field and learning the building process really elicited for me the passion, that I have for this industry. And I do have a passion for this industry. I love this industry. And, that passion has changed somewhat over the past, 35 years or so. And, my passion has become more about probably the people in the industry and what the industry can do for its community and for the folks that, take part in this industry. But I love this industry. And I think that all started by, spending time out there, in the hot summer sun and in northern Florida on construction projects.
Yeah. As I was looking at some of the work that you've done, the work that you guys do at AM King has a direct correlation with the affordability or lack thereof of food at the consumer level, even if you think about it. As I was looking at some of the projects that you've worked on and, looking at, you did you've done a couple of projects, and obviously these are all for open consumption, but you've worked with Aldi US and you've done a large distribution center for them. And you also did a big project right there in the Carolinas with Southern Foods. And as I was reading about that project, it just reminded me of how interrelated the design industry is with everything else that goes on in the world. And I think sometimes we disconnect and don't connect the dots. But as I was looking at this, I was realizing that, yeah, if you help this food company be more efficient in the way that they're able to deliver food, well, at the end of the day, yeah, they'll probably make more money, but they will also probably be able to deliver food more effectively at a more cost-effective price point, which hopefully translates to that benefiting the end user, which is the consumer, which is me going to the store to buy whatever they're selling and, and other stuff. So, a lot of times we don't think of the interrelatedness of the work that's done in the design industry space. We just think, oh, they just built this beautiful building or this beautiful warehouse or whatever, but there is some interconnectedness there. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that and how you view the projects you do from that perspective.
So, yeah, that's really an interesting perspective, an interesting concept. I kind of fell into the food business by chance. When I was younger in my career, I was introduced to, I was just assigned to some food projects and then became more known in our company as, the guy who understands the food business. And then when I started the company in 2004, I said, that's really the direction I want to take the company. I really wanted to have a niche focused company on the food industry. And that's what we've worked to develop over the last, 17, 18 years. But, to your point, it has really brought home for us, I think, the importance of what we do. And look, I mean, I get it. Our clients are in the food business because it's a profitable business for them. So let's not lose sight of that. However, the food industry is one industry that we all cannot live without, right? It's integral to who we are as a society. And that was really brought home to us over the last, 20 months or so, because during the pandemic, it was an essential business. Food businesses did not shut down. Restaurants shut down, but, grocery stores, food distribution, food processing, food manufacturing, that cannot end. And we all remember hearing the stories of some of the meat plants and some of the other protein plants that were having these horrible outbreaks among their staff, among their workers, because they had to go to work and they had to keep that plant operating. And And I remember there was even a time period where there was some real concern in our society about, well, what happens if some of those facilities shut down? So yeah, we realize that we are an integral part of the food chain within our society. And I think that is why, number one, we are such a niche market in that it is such an integral piece to our society. It's such a highly technical aspect of what we do because there's a lot of regulations and a lot of industry standards around the food industry. You have the USDA, you have food safety requirements. The consumer depends upon food to be affordable, certainly, but more importantly, they depend upon their food to be safe. They depend that their food doesn't have pathogens, doesn't have, bacteria, that when they go and they open up that chicken or that can of, beans or whatever, that food is suitable for human consumption. And that's a big part of what we do every day is work with our customers and our clients in regarding the food safety piece. So to that extent, we take our jobs very, very seriously. And we take that responsibility very seriously. And we also take a lot of pride in the fact that we feel we are, as I said earlier, an integral piece of the whole food supply chain to the consumer. On the affordability piece, a lot of people don't know this, but the food industry works on very small margins. And, the ability to produce food at a very low cost or very efficient cost is very important. It's not just important for the manufacturers, but it's important for the consumers as well. So we are constantly being challenged by our customers and our clients to look at what we call efficiencies. How can we do something more efficient? How can we add some value to their production chain, to their distribution chain, to their transportation chain to allow them to save costs? And I will tell you, the food companies I've dealt with over the years, and there have been many, those costs are passed along to the consumers because they have to be, and that's what the consumer expects. So there's, again, to recap, two very big elements. There's the affordability piece, and then there's the food safety piece, and making sure that, not only is the food safe, but it's efficiently delivered to the dinner table, if you will.
Yeah, no, you're speaking my language in terms of just some of the challenges that have been faced during this pandemic. I literally, as from where I'm recording this here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I live about 8 minutes from the world headquarters for Tyson Foods, which is the second largest meat processor in the world. And certainly they came very, very close to having to shut down plants. And of course, they had issues with the pandemic and all of that. So these challenges were definitely had to be met head on, and they weren't easy to deal with, that's for sure. So it's interesting to see how firms like yours have come in and been able to provide some consulting services and some advice and guidance on how best to meet the challenges that are faced in this new environment that we're in. So, it's job security, but I would say it's got to be interesting for you because every day there's always something new.
It really is. And, and look, the food industry is a wide ranging industry. From there's the meat or protein, we refer to it as protein, but the meat aspect, there's obviously then the produce side of it, there's the baking side of it, there's the ready to eat side. I mean, there's just so many different aspects to the food industry. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's huge, but yet in some ways it's like anything else. It's also very small, to your point. And yeah, you're right around the corner from Tyson, and they're one of the biggest players in the world. And, the country was concerned, well, what if a couple of these Tyson plants closed down? What's that going to mean for the meat industry? And there would have been, a ripple effect, a fairly significant ripple effect through our society if that had happened. And you start realizing that, and you come to the conclusion that, even though the food industry is very large, in some respects, it's also very small and very specific.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest modifications or changes that have been born out of this pandemic for AM King in terms of things that you guys now do differently, or modifications that you've made that have actually been what we like sometimes like to call happy accidents, right? Things that just happen and like, oh my God, I had no idea this was actually going to benefit us the way that they did. And I think for some design firms, leaders that I've talked to over the past 18 months, there have been a variety of things. I know one leader, for instance, found the time to start creating weekly videos that he would send out. And he's about a 1,300 person firm. And that was a difference maker for them. Never had done it before, but because of just the distancing and all of what we've had to endure with this pandemic, he started doing these social videos and putting them out on a regular basis, just some of his musings and thoughts and, what he was thinking about the industry and maybe looking at things from his, 25,000, 50,000 foot view that he's going to naturally have as a leader of an organization. He found that to not only be cathartic for him, but he also found it to be truly educational and uplifting for the rest of his team. And I'm just curious for you guys, what have you implemented over these past 18 to 20 months that has been kind of a game changer for you that obviously it's not something that you're going to stop anytime soon?
Everybody has their own story of the impacts and the effects of the pandemic. And, certainly there's been a number of things that we have implemented that did not exist beforehand. I mean, we've gone to a sort of a hybrid, remote work policy. We're doing a lot more via video, via the Zoom and the Teams meetings. We're traveling a lot less. I mean, being a national company, on any given day, we had a number of AM King people on airplanes, in airports and flying to different cities throughout the country. And we're not doing that as much anymore. And I don't see that type of stuff going away. I see that, now becoming a basic tenet of business. But I think for us, what we have kind of learned, we as an organization are very culture focused. And it's always been really important to us to create and nurture a specific culture regarding who we are and how we do. And, I think what we learned is that our culture is dependent upon, to a large extent, personal interaction. And that's probably what you don't want to hear during the pandemic, is to say, well, we need more personal interaction. We need to get back to personal interaction. And it almost feels like, it's one of those things, well, we that's wrong. We shouldn't say that. But we've kind of come to the realization that no, we need personal interaction. That's who we are. I mean, we have our building in Charlotte, the upper floor is the construction operations team and the lower floor is the design team. And they're separated by a set of stairs. And I think one of the things that makes us so unique and successful as a company is that we really work on that seamless interaction between our design and our operations, our construction and our operations. Our construction and our design. And we started sensing that we were losing some of that by doing everything via video or phone calls. And we came to the realization that we can't run from who we are. We can't try to change who we are. And it didn't affect us negatively. Our projects cruised along, and I don't think our clients and our customers saw any difference, because quite frankly, our work increased during the pandemic for a lot of different reasons, which we could discuss later, but our work increased. We had to hire more. So, we had a lot of things going on, and, unfortunately or unfortunately for some other companies, they weren't able to experience. But we found that we really need to get back in the office to some extent. And that was just a part of who we are and a part of how we operate and a big part of our culture. But again, culture to us as an organization is extremely important. And we make an effort to not only nurture that culture, but really to exhibit that culture to our customers, to our suppliers, and to, those we interact with in our community. So I think that for us, that was the big learning experience, is that some remote is fine and it will be fine. But as a general rule, we also need to have together time. We need to have, collaboration and coordination in person to some extent.
Yeah. I call it the kneecap to kneecap rule. So, there's something,
absolutely.
There's something to be said for that. And that's the thing I so desperately miss. I can't tell you the number of Zoom trainings that I've done for Zweig group over the last year and a half. And as much as I enjoyed doing them, I just missed the personal interaction that I would have when I would do these live versus talking to 150 people through a computer screen. And they were effective, right, but they just didn't, it's just different, and there's just some things that are just hard to replicate. And until we get jacked in our brain with some type of virtual AI or something like that allows us to experience being with someone, even if they're 1,000 miles away, the technology is far away from that ever happening. I still say that the face-to-face time is the most important. So,
and I mean, it's also just the face-to-face time. But for us, it was really, I think I tend to use the word collaboration. I mean, I feel you lose a level of collaboration over a video. And when I say collaboration, I'm talking about an open exchange of ideas and opinions. I think the creativity is lost. So that for us is what I felt like was missing. You go to the teams meeting, you have the discussion, and you knock down the agenda, and let's address this, let's address that, let's address this, and you get from point A to point B. Don't get me wrong, you get from point A to point B. But what are you missing in that journey? What roadside stands are you not stopping at because you're just on the interstate going from this city to that city? The collaboration, the ability to get off on the side road and to look at things differently and to share those ideas and to have those ideas openly criticized or critiqued and discussed. I feel like that's really hard to replicate on a video call. And as a design construction firm where we are constantly being challenged by our clients to do things differently, to come up with more efficiencies, to come up with things that are more affordable, to do it faster, to do it better, we need that level of collaboration in our business. Absolutely. And that's just part of who we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the sentiment that I've heard from most leaders is that, it is nice to innovate, but there are some things that there's just no, what's the best word to use? There is no substitute for it. So, but no, I agree with you 100%. Well, as we close out, I did want to bring this up because again, there were a couple of things that you mentioned early on, and I don't want this to be lost on anyone because one of the challenges that I know working at Zwei Group in two different time periods, one of the situations that we always ran into were dealing with firm leaders that had never had an exit strategy. And I know my buddy Will Swearingen will appreciate this, and so will Phil Kyle, because they do a lot of strategy work and a lot of ownership transition. But I really want to applaud you guys for kind of beginning with the end in mind, right? With this idea that these other gentlemen that came on with you to start AM King said, hey, we're going to do this, but we're going to do this for a season. And that season is 10 years. And then after that, we're going to pass the baton to you, and then you're going to take it and run with it from there. Did you, in your mind, have an idea that when you decided to pass the baton, it was going to be in the form of an ESOP? Or was that something that just kind of came up that you maybe had witnessed it with some peer firms and decided to do it yourself? How did that come about?
So to your point, I do believe you have to have an end in mind at some point, and you've got to develop that early. So, I'm 59 years old. So some people would say, well, I was maybe a little too young. The only time I would call myself young anymore, I think, but a little too young to start thinking about an exit strategy. But I disagree with that. I think that you always have to be thinking about your exit strategy. When my two partners exited the company in 2014, it was really only about 3 years later that I started saying, okay, now what am I going to do? And there were a lot of things that were causing me to think about that. We were getting qualified offers, private equity or competitors. They wanted to buy us. And quite honestly, that was not how I wanted the direction of the company to go. I didn't want to sell the company. But, I knew that, for lack of better words, that pressure wasn't going to end. And I knew at some point I'd have to make a decision. And I just wanted to think about what my options were. Secondly, this is something I really took as a compliment, is that the younger management in our company started pushing me away. And from that, I don't mean of saying, Brian, we don't want you around. And so, Brian, we want to do what you're doing. We want to do more. We want to, continue to grow the company. We want to think about where the company can be in 5 or 10 years. And, I looked at that as a testament that we got some strong young, leaders within our organization, and I need to give them more and more responsibility, and I needed to give them a greater reins on the organization. So I kind of looked at it as I really had, sort of a couple of options. One was to do the third party sale, which was not attractive. None of our children are interested in the business, and I'm sort of a non-nepotism type of person. So that was really not something that was appealing to me either. So it was really, what about selling to the employees? And, there's 2 ways to do that. You can parcel off pieces and parts to specific employees, and all those, that's an excellent option. I just felt our company was the culture of our company was so holistic, so homogenous, that I really hated to separate out and say, well, this person is entitled to buy some of the company, this person is not. And I had a couple of friends that have done the ESOP process before, and I talked to them, and I started doing research and ultimately came back and said, I think this is the right way for us to go. And, the funny thing about an ESOP is that the impact is minimal, almost non-existent to the employees. It's totally non-existent to the customers. The person that is impacted most by the ESOP is the person that sells, which is me. And I've learned that. I learned that as we were going through the process. And I've certainly learned that in the 9 months now since we closed on the ESOP, has been the impact upon me, because it's a long-term process to take, the sale proceeds. You have to stay with the company in a management role, but you go from being the owner that you've been for many, many years to now you're an employee. And it's a total mind shift. And I actually just I do some writing for some publications here and there. And one publication just asked me to write about that process. And in that article, I said, it's simple stuff like, I can't say it's my company anymore, because it's not. I'm actually the only employee that will never have the opportunity to own shares again within the organization, based on how we did the ESOP. So, it's a different sort of shift in how you think and to a degree in how you act, but it really had the greatest impact was upon me as the previous owner. But with that said, I think it was just a fantastic solution for our employees. They're excited about it. I think it's a great opportunity for them. I think they're going to do great things with this organization. So I'm excited for them and what it's going to mean for them over the next, many, many years in the next generation of the organization.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you said that. I mean, and I also think when I think of ESOPs, I also think of just the whole expression skin in the game, right? Everybody's got some now. Whereas before, a lot of times, and especially in the design industry, and this is something that I've experienced back in the 90s too, but everybody would just look up to the ownership and that was that. And it was like this elusive goal that you could never quite get to, because, you may not be invited to that principals meeting. But as an ESOP, it's a much different situation, because everybody has ownership, and, all the way down to the person answering the phones. And so, there is something to be said for that. So I'm glad that you guys went that route. And I think that your firm, from a longevity perspective, is going to be the better for it. And you will have benefited as well. So, and it will be your legacy, which to me is as important as the gold that we earn in our lifetime. I think our legacy is right up there with that.
No, you're absolutely right. I think that, the skin in the game comment, and I have noticed that among the employees, that, they tease me. I think one of them told me the other day, so, now we can fire you, Brian. And I said, well, that's actually not true. I'm still the CEO of the company, so I still have a little bit of power. But, the point being is they're saying, look, we realize now that we have a different level of responsibility. And, the success of this company is going to have a direct impact upon our pocketbook, in the future. And look, an ESOP is not it takes a long time for the value of the company to build up. I mean, when I started my company in 2004, I went a whole year without a salary, and it took many years for me to build value in that company. And it's going to take them a number of years to build value as well. But by the same token, I think there is a greater level of, I'm going to use the term ownership or owning it. And I mean that more in the figurative sense, although it applies in the literal sense as well. But in the figurative sense is that we own this. And so, the way we interact with our customers, the level of attention we give to our project, the focus we put on cost and on quality and on schedule and, how we maintain the culture, those take on a little bit different level of importance, I think, to everybody within the organization.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Man, I could talk to you all day long, Brian. This has really been good. And I appreciate, you gave us levels of information, both from, you're starting out in the ditches, digging those things back at the University of Florida and how you kind of got involved in the actually almost accidentally got involved in the construction space. And look where it has taken you to new heights. And because of that, not only have you've been able to be a blessing to your family, but you have all of your employees and what they've been able to do. So I really applaud you. And I was going to ask you, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that? But you actually have a great website, and the website is just, I want to encourage everybody to go there. It's just Brian T. King, all one word, .com. You can learn all you want to learn about Brian, about his perspective on running a successful design firm. You can connect with him there. You can link up with him on Instagram, on Twitter, on and LinkedIn, and just learn a little bit more about some of his insights. And I'm going to go a step further by saying that I'm going to get with the editors of the Zweig Letter, because we need to get you to write a couple articles for for Zweig Group's The Zweig Letter, which is the namesake of this podcast. And hopefully I'll be able to twist your arm to get you to consider doing that. But I've seen your writing, and I don't think it's going to be much of a stretch for you.
Well, I appreciate that. Those are very kind words. And thank you for the plug, if you will. The writing that I do, and, whether it's a blog or whether it's an article, I do not do it for profit purposes. I'm not, that's not what I'm doing. I do it because I really enjoy sharing ideas and opinions and thoughts. I would love to do something for the Zweig Letter. So certainly we can look at something, along those lines. But
absolutely. Yeah, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I was already in the back of my mind. I was already like, I'm going to get with the editor and I'm going to say, hey, I've got another writer for you, but we'll figure something out. But Brian, thank you so much for coming on the Zweig Letter podcast and sharing your background and experience. And I think it's nice that we're able to bring different leaders in from different sectors of our industry that have had success and have been able to do things the right way for a sustained period of time. So I'm glad that at the young age of 41 that you decided to start AM King, and look where we are today. So thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Randy, thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it as well. I'm like you, I could talk for hours. So thank you so much for letting me be your guest. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, folks. Another episode of the Zweig Letter podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed that. To learn more about one of the oldest newsletters in the design industry by visiting thezweigletter.com. You can read articles online. You can listen to this podcast and sign up for a free subscription to the newsletter and have it delivered right into your email inbox every Monday morning. And who knows, one Zweig Letter article soon might feature our current guest today, Brian King. But I want you to sign up today for that free subscription to the Zweig Letter newsletter. For more information about Zweig Group's advisory services or any Zweig Group publications, visit zweiggroup.com. You can subscribe to the Zweig Letter podcast wherever you listen to it, and please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we'll see you soon. Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to the Zweig Letter podcast. We hope that you can be part of elevating the industry and that you can apply our advice and information to your daily professional life. For a free digital subscription to the Zweig Letter, please visit thezweigletter.com/subscribe to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.